As I mentioned, there's some things in Psalm 118 that we wanted to talk about, but I also want to show you something that's in Deuteronomy. So if we go to Deuteronomy 32, it has to do with the Song of Moses. And in there's a lot of things. Here, in verse 27, it says, "They provoked me with a non-God, angered me with their emptiness, vanities. So I shall provoke them with a non-people. With a vile nation I shall anger them." If you look at the Song of Moses, what Yahweh says is, in the later days, this song will be a witness to the people of Israel. And we could sit there and say, this whole business with the Palestinians sure looks like this. They're a non-nation. Hamas and Hezbollah, the terrorist people, with a vile nation I shall anger them. You could say, those darn terrorists. It's like, you want to shake your fist at Yahweh? Yahweh says right here, he's going to do this to Israel. You see, groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, which means violence, you see, those are Hebrew words. They are playing into the curse that Yahweh put on Israel for not keeping the covenant, the terms of the betrothal. The betrothal is in truth. In truth, I will be fidelity with Yahweh. I was just showing you some words here regarding that, but there's another verse in 32:17. Actually, that's not this one. I'll take this off. That's the wrong word that I was going to use. I'll read this in the way they have it translated. They would slaughter, which is to say in parenthetical, offer sacrifices to demons without power, gods whom they knew not, newcomers recently arrived, whom your ancestors did not dread. You ignored the rock who gave birth to you and forgot the Elohim who brought you forth. This is verse 17 and 18 of Deuteronomy 32. I got to write a couple things here. Okay, here's the first few words. I want to show you a benefit of learning how to read these words and letters. Remember, it's all a matter of to what do you appropriate the meanings of the letters when you go to do the translation. So if you think that Aleph is an ox, Bet is a house, Gimel is a camel, Dalet is a door, Hey is a window, Vav is a nail, Zion is a weapon or a plowshare, that's true. But if you say Aleph is the plan, the purpose of the Almighty Creator of heaven and earth, Bet is the material manifestation, the structure, the cosmology of the universe, the incorporation into matter of the Aleph plan, Gimel is the sent one, Gimel is to put in motion, Gimel is to take Bet, the noun, and put it into verb motion form. Gimel, camel, movement. Dalet is a door, but it also means to be hanged down or impoverished. It's an opening, it's a choice, like a fork in the road, like a threshold. Hey, revealed. Vav, man, a bridge, that which connects this to that. That's all outside the het of the Mishkan. But if you see the Mishkan pattern, which this chart over here lines up, here you have Aleph Tav. It's the one word which is never translated in the scriptures. It's used as a grammatical pointer, as it were, kind of like putting things in quotation marks. You don't translate quotation marks. You can do this, you can do sign language. Aleph Tav is kind of the same thing. That's all they use it for. But Yeshua said, I'm the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, otherwise known in Greek as the Alpha and Omega. I'm the Aleph and the Tav. They're like book covers. Everything else is what's in between. As we talked, the word mem is to be gestation or pregnancy or the counting of the 49. It's kind of like memming is the various pages in a book, flipping through from the beginning to the end, from the Aleph to the Tav. The word emet, Aleph Mem Tav, is truth. And the word Aleph Mem is the word mother, or to be born. It's a womb. And the word for death is Mem Tav, or Mem Vav Tav. So one way to say what the truth is Aleph is a prefix, means I will. I will be born of a womb, Aleph Mem, and I will die, Aleph Mem Tav. So for Yeshua to be born of a womb and die a death, being true and not a fable, not a fiction, not a made-up story concocted by the conglomeration of various pagan other stories and fables that were gathered up by Constantine and his boys. They may have done that, and it may sound very similar, but because the word Aleph Mem Tav can be read as, I will be born of a womb and die, I can believe that Yeshua was the sent one, the Gimmeled one. Remember the word Dalet Lamed Lamed, Dalal, as is written in this chart here. It means it's to hang down. It's kind of like taking a bucket and dropping it into a well. That's Dalet Lamed Lamed. For the Aleph, the Almighty Creator, to put himself into some form of manifestation, into corporeal, material being, that's Bet, Nun, bone, like the structures of a building, bones, structure of a body. Gimel, the sent ambassador, voyager to Dalet 4, letter 4, the earth, earthiness. He's a hanging down. It's like taking your hand and sticking it into a pit of vipers, allowing yourself to be bitten. That's what Yeshua did. I can see that in the picture of the way the words are formed. So I don't have a problem believing it, even if Constantine did, as I say, conglomerate a bunch of pagan stories to come up with what we think of as Christianity, which is a historical fact. The point is, there's stories within the meanings of the letters. And so because they're the meanings of the letters, and because if you can pin the meanings of the letters to the stuff which is Yahweh's, not of human design, the 7 days, the 7 festivals, the Mishkan, because that's Yahweh's stuff, then I can trust those meanings as to what these letters mean, and then appropriate those meanings to the interpretation of the words. It's trustworthy. The colors of these letters are keyed to the pattern of the colors on this chart to make it easy. So you have Aleph and Tav being like white light, the full spectrum. And when you take white light and you put it through a prism, all the other colors are broken down. See, what we're doing here, again, to reiterate, is that Nun Samik is, or between the Nun and the Samik, there's a break. There's like a Selah. The spring festivals, Het through Nun, summer month, the break, and then you get to the 7th month festivals, starting with Samik. So there's this natural break. That's why we're taking a Selah to stop and think about it. So we're discussing these things regarding Nun Samik, which happens to be the word flag, which happens to be the word for a sign and a symbol. If you look at the word maskil, for what it's worth, there's some psalms which are said it's a maskil of David or a maskil of Asaph or somebody else. If you look at the word maskil, what it means is a riddle, an intellectual puzzle. So he's telling you right there, certain psalms were crafted with ingenuity, with cunning, with shrewd manipulation of words and pictures. Sorry, they're in Hebrew. You'll never see them in English, Greek, or Latin. Learn Hebrew, and it's a puzzle to be unpuzzled, to be sephared, to be Solomon said, it's the glory of Elohim to hide a matter. It's the glory of kings. How many of us are kings? Well, we've always heard, oh yes, so the believers are a kingdom of priests, or a nation of kings and priests. The word for king, melech, also means one who takes counsel. So instead of reading it's the glory of kings, you could say it's the glory of one who takes counsel to uncover a matter. What is counsel? This stuff. It's the glory of one who will regard what these things mean to unravel the mysterious puzzles that Yahweh put together. And when he says it's his glory, remember Moshe said, show me your glory. And he passed by and he showed him some special effects, maybe. If you want to see his glory, there's something that Yahweh embedded into the universe, which itself is a manifestation. You see, when he spoke, it made sound waves. Sound waves. They say, well, is sound waves, what about light? When he spoke and said, let there be light, there was light. Yehi or, vayehi or. Yehi means let there be. Light is or. But see, light is the sound waves. And the word orim is lights. The orim and the tumim with the stones on the breastplate. But it's also where we get the word aur, oracle, auricular. It has to do with hearing. Hearing and light are the same exact word in English, which comes out of Latin, and Greek, which comes out of Hebrew. Sound and light is the same thing. Everything that we see, everything that exists, was because Yahweh spoke it. You see, the mystery is embedded in the language. And we talked about it before. Yahweh said, the words that I have put in your mouth, I will not take out of your mouth, you nor your children nor your children's children forever. It's like, what words did he stick in our mouth? The word that I have placed in your mouth is essentially the word Semitic. The Semitic language happens to be the Hebrew root base, which has to do with three-letter consonantal verb roots, completed, incompleted action, vowels interspersed. It's Hebrew. So for Yahweh says, I have placed there, or I have placed in you, is the word Semitic. And when you see the Semitic languages, you realize you can break down phonetically all these words and find these hidden mysteries of Yahweh's revelation of what he was really saying. So the purpose of this, so here we have the Aleph, which is white light. We go blue, purple, red, and then we're just coloring the spectrum. But when we get down here, we have 3 blues, 2 purples, 2 reds, and then orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, red. We're going through the color wheel. It's like, why is that? As I said before, Het, Tet, and Yod has to do with, whose kingdom is this? The Yod of Yod, He, Vav, He. Remember the 4-colored embroidery, blue, purple, red, on white linen. And the idea was trying to think, does this mean something? Does the color sequence mean something? Blue, purple, red with white linen. Said over 20 times. Leviticus, I think it's also mentioned in Numbers, on the embroidery of the Mishkan and of the priest's garments. Hey, 4, here it's Sephering, right? Crazy 8. 4 colors, blue, purple, red, white. 4 letters in Yod, He, Vav, He. The first letter is a Yod. It means the creator, the hand of the artist. Could blue mean the hand of Yahweh, the creator, his authority? I made this place, so I make up the rules. Is that why cops used to generally wear blue? Is that why the sky's blue? Is that why we have blue tzitzit thread? Is that why the throne room floor is like sapphire pavement, and sapphire generally is regarded as the blue color? Possibly. I'm not saying, oh, this is what it is. I'm saying, look, these things seem to fit the pattern. Purple, the color of royalty, royal decrees. What's the Torah? The royal decrees of Yod, the creator. So blue, purple, Kaf and Lamed, following the Het, Tet, and Yod. This is the kingdom. Right inside the fence was the altar of sacrifice. Here's the royal decrees, the Torah. Memnun, red, blood. That's like the Vav of Yod, He, Vav, He. So the Yod means the creator. The He is the expression or the revealing of the Yod, which is the Torah. The Vav then is the incarnation, man, the bridge between the first He and the second He, like the 2 wings of the menorah, and the Vav in the middle. The center candle, the Shemesh, the servant candle. The sun is also the word Shemesh. It's the servant that runs from here to there. Yeshua being the one who held the revelation of the Torah, of the He of the Yod. And he says, I will give you the Ruach as a helper to keep you in the truth. That's the word azar. He is the azar. He says, I told you to watch until the thing I told you to watch for comes. The Ruach HaKodesh is the azar. Remember the Eben Azar, the helper, like the wife, the helpmeet, the tourniquet that wraps around. The azar that keeps us from the command to watch until the thing he said to watch for comes. What's the Ruach HaKodesh? The word Ruach is the expanse, or the wind, like the blowing of the flag. That's the word Ruach. The Ruach was causing the flag to ripple. So the Ruach is not just the Spirit or the Holy Spirit. It's the breath, it's expanse, it's opening the doors, it's letting the wind blow through. It's something that's moving from here to there. So as Aleph moves to Tav through these letters that Yahweh designed, because these letters line up with their meanings according to the 7 days, the 7 festivals, and the Mishkan, as the Aleph, which is complete, incorporates itself into Bet, and then starts to expand and unfold to where? To Tav. As it's expanding and billowing out like a flower opening up, showing you that was what was always in the bud of the flower, like the Aleph, which is one in the bud, and it opens up and shows you what's inside. That's Aleph revealing everything up to Tav, like the book that's closed, opening up and revealing what's on all the pages. That's the picture of Ruach. And the Kadosh means, Kuf Dalet Shin means, the Kuf is like this jar and something poured out, the picture of the letter Q. So what poured out right out of Yahweh's mouth, Dalet Shin is where we get the word douse, like to douse something with water. So the pure, clean water that flows out of Yahweh is like Kuf Dalet Shin. So the Ruach Kadosh, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Kadesh opening up the flower, is these letters of the alphabet. So that's why I'm saying, one could sit there, and if you know these pictures, you could look at these alphabet opening up to reveal the Nun Samek, the living one manifested, lifted up, Yeshua lifted up, made evident like our flag, our banner of Yeshua, revealed by the 22 letters, and each of the 22 letters points to him. All of them completely working together is the picture of the Ruach HaKodesh. Is that a picture of the Holy Spirit? Not if you think of them in terms of Holy Spirit and Christian terminology, but if you know what the words mean in Hebrew, Yahweh gave us the alphabet as the Ruach HaKodesh, as the Eben HaAzar. Eben, Aleph Bet Nun, the word stone, Aleph Bet, father, Bet Nun, son, but Bet Nun is not just son, it's also where we get the word bone, which is also where we get the word for the structure of the body. Bet Nun is also where we get the word bin, which means between, or bina, which is to think and to put things together, which is also, if you get Tav Bene, my son, Bet Nun Yod Tav, Bet Nun Yod Tav, which is a word which we talked about in the chart, is the word for pattern. In the signs of the covenant, my son is guarded by the terms of the covenant. That's the word for pattern. The pattern is the structure, the Bet Nun, of what Abba planned Aleph to be manifested, Bet. Nun, the word to impart the engagement of the action, Gimel is a verb, but Nun is like a lightning bolt making something happen. We said that last week. Nun being a prefix, like a lightning bolt, where to supplement the energies of the earth, lightning comes from the sky and adds more. But the one who does something on the earth is the suffix of the Nun, which is one engaged in the action, or a noun, an agential, a noun as an agent of one doing, like a carpenter doing carpentry, you might say. So the Nun is this action word. So if we Nun, or put into action, what the Aleph Bet says, that's Aleph Bet Nun, which is the stone that hits the feet of the statue in Daniel chapter 2 and knocks the thing over, not with human armed conflict, but simply by doing what Yahweh said. That's where this is trying to go. So my point is, if we see that all this stuff is what Yahweh said, then you have this verse in Deuteronomy 32:27. They provoked me with a non-God, a non-Elohim, something not prescribed, angered me with their emptiness, vanities. So I shall provoke them with a non-people, with a vile nation, I shall anger him. He says, remember, I told you this was going to happen. Well, then you jump over to, that was 27. If you go to verse 17, they would slaughter or offer sacrifices to demons without power, gods whom they knew not. So here's this word. As a prefix, as we discussed before, and I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of a breakdown. As a prefix, Yod as a prefix means he will. So this is the verb root, and this is is a suffix, means his, and this basically means and. The yod in the beginning is the work, and it basically means he, or he will work. So there you got the verb. And if you look up in the dictionary, under the words that start with bet het, and then you look at the words starting with zayin bet, and then you can look at zayin bet het, but you can look at other words that start with zayin bet, and you get a feeling for what it means to be zayin betness. And if you know what aleph means, you can look up zayin bet aleph. If you know what bet means, you can look at zayin bet bet, and then you can see what changed between zayin bet aleph and zayin bet het, zayin bet gimel, zayin bet dalet, zayin bet hey. It's just a matter of work. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of putting the energy in with the dictionary. You can use this chart, but if you know what these letters mean, then you can either plug a letter in or pull a letter out, and you'll see what other things go on, how the word is affected. So, for example, this word shadim, this word shaddai. How many of you have heard the word El Shaddai? Oh, yes, the Almighty. Well, the other thing is, this says they would slaughter the demons without power. This is word for demons. Yod Mim is a prefix of a plural, like our letter S. So this is saying that the word shad is actually a demon. And this letter, lamed, as we said before, like pushing and pulling, is this energy of force. And literally as a prefix, it's usually always regarded as the word unto or toward. Or remember, there might be psalms that say lamed David, which might mean by. It's this reference of back and forth kind of a thing, similar to a gimel. And the gimel is a letter which means raised up, and the lamed in modern is raised up. I'm showing you that there's these interconnections between the letters. So you might sit there and say this, okay, this word here, zabak, has to do with slaughtering. So it says they would slaughter, and in parentheses in this particular translation of Stone Tanakh, it says offer sacrifices, they would offer sacrifices to demons. Okay, they would offer sacrifices unto demons without power. Well, this word lo means no or not. Allah, well, the word El is where we get the word Elohim, and that can mean power. It's where we get the word God. Allah can be a female god or deity, but it also can mean oath or curse. Elohim, that's the plural. It's where you get the word that's translated as technically gods. Lo, this means again no, or not, or non. Ida, well, this is where you get the word yada. You know, people say like yada, 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 I know. But this word dalet ayin has to do with knowledge. And then, okay, here this has to do with the plural again. So if you dissect this, you could say, well, that has to do with this word for he. And you could say, okay, that's how they got the translation. But now let me show you something else. If you look in the dictionary, under this word, we'll do this. Zayin bet het. So again, this dictionary is written in modern, and I write it in paleo because it uses a different part of your brain. If you just look at it in this modern Hebrew, I found that you're just like look at the letters and trying to translate. But when you draw them in paleo, each letter is a picture, and so it affects, it's the whole right brain, left brain thing. So what I do is I read the words in the Stone's Tanakh, because it's very clear and easy to read. You know, you read in English, you find something that triggers your attention. You might be looking at a different word. You might be looking up in Strong's Concordance for a certain subject matter. Or you might be reading one thing in one verse. You go, hey, wait a minute, that reminds me of this other verse. And you flip over there and you start doing this crazy eight thing. You start jumping around, right? And you're doing your own study. And then all of a sudden, you sit there and you write it then from the, you find this, and you write it into the paleo, and then you start seeing the words differently. You start seeing them differently than in the modern Hebrew. And then you start seeing things all of a sudden. Zayin Bet Het. So you have to know the sequence of the letters because this is written in alphabetical notation. This is the dictionary in Hebrew for readers of English. So the letters in Hebrew are written right to left, of course, but the sequence here starts with Aleph, like an English book. If it was a real Hebrew dictionary, it would be starting in the backside, like the Tanakh is. So you have to be in your mind to be able to shift back and forth, which you might start stumbling and tripping as you go, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It's like dribbling a basketball, and running or playing guitar and singing at the same time. So if you look at Zayin Bet Het, it would be on page 193. It says that word, those three letters, Zayin Bet Het, means to sacrifice or to slaughter. It also, if you put a noon in front of it, means was sacrificed or was slaughtered. Because the noon is to act in the engagement of doing something. So the more you read through this dictionary, you'll start realizing how words are constructed simply by reading. So like I said, if you don't know how to read the Tanakh or you don't have one, just start reading the dictionary. Just start someplace, anyplace. Just open up and start reading, and you'll learn how the language is constructed. Now then, if you change the vowel points, if you notice in Paleo there's no vowel points. I don't regard the vowel points. Maybe some people say that's wrong. The vowel points were added later. It was something that was handed down through the oral tradition. Maybe they're of merit and value, maybe they're not. I don't know, but none of the Paleo was written with vowel points, so I'm simply looking at all the possibilities of the spellings of the words written without vowel points. And I know that many people who speak Hebrew would completely disagree and shut this off on that account, but this is the study of Eriktology, which is the study of looking at the letters. It's not the science of proper Hebrew grammar, nor is it the study of Judaism or Christianity, so this is just the study of Ayin Resh Kaf, Erik, which on the bottom of the chart says, down here in the bottom corner, to appropriate value, to estimate, to give something a regard that didn't have a regard, and to assess it and put it in order and row and column and organize it in such a way you can look at it and make sense out of it. That's all we're doing, is trying to make sense out of something that we were never told made any sense, that we were never given any access to, that we were told was done away with, thrown away, just toss it in the trash, it'll do you no good. We're here studying this because I believe there is a good, and I believe all you believe there's a good. And we have yet to see the real value of this thing. Anyway, it also means a feast or a meal. If you say a feast or a meal, that's where they come up with, oh, they sacrifice a slaughter offering. But you see, if you could say, and he will sacrifice himself, couldn't this be read as he will sacrifice himself as a slaughter offering? Unto Shadim, unto demons? Who's it talking about? He will sacrifice himself as a slaughter offering unto demons. Let's look at the word Shaddai. Shin 641. Shin Dalet Dalet means to overpower, destroy, violently rob, devastate, ruin, despoil, ravage, Shaddad. Shin Dalet Hay, field, open country, land, outside, outdoors. What does that mean? An open, they just tore down a house in the street that I was working on, and it's a Shaddad. They took what was a house, it was devastated and destroyed, the structure was removed, and now it's an open field. So a Shaddad, Shin Dalet Hay, is an open field where what was there has been devastated, destroyed, ruined, removed, and is no longer around. Something was robbed. It was taken away, maybe on purpose, maybe it wasn't robbery, but I'm telling you it's the concept of removing something that was there. Shin Dalet Hay also means an evil spirit, a female spirit, because the letter Hay at the end of a word, like here, is the feminine, whereas the Vav at the end of the word is the masculine. An evil spirit, a female demon is a Shaddai? Well, so it is a beautiful woman. Does that mean every beautiful woman is an evil demon? No, but that's the way Hebrew works. It's also a chest of drawers. Now, what has an evil demon, a female, a beautiful woman, and a chest of drawers got to do with an open field or something devastating? You could sit there and try to put those things together in your mind, and that's suffering. That's trying to, go wherever you want with that. Shaddai, the Almighty, dispenser of benefits and protector of peace. It also means, Shaddai literally means field. It also means sufficing or sufficient. It also means diabolical and devilish. It's also shad as a female breast. If you look at simply sheen dalit, a protuberance, an evil spirit or a demon. It's also violence, havoc, and devastation. Simply sheen dalit. Again, it also, if you go to sheen dalit aleph vav tav, remember aleph vav tav is a letter of the alphabet, or it's an oath, but this is also a military field craft like a tank or a cannon. That which causes devastation. And you could say, wait a minute, Shin Dalet Aleph Vav Tav, oat, is the same as the word Nun Samik, is the same as the word Segen, Samik Gimel Nun, which means a sign or a symbol. So you could say, to devastate the oath of the alphabet letters, to devastate the sign, the symbol, is to devastate or to ruin, to rob or evacuate the symbology that was given to us by El Shaddai, will destroy the field of whatever he said that he would bless if we simply kept his words. And it's the same as looking at a howitzer cannon or a tank that just has ruined everything. What that has to do with a beautiful woman, I don't know. But the point is, does this only mean she-demon or demons? Well, here's the thing. If you translate El Shaddai, which is literally spelled El, Shin, Dalet, Yod. Remember, the monogram of El Shaddai is the modern Hebrew letter Shin, or otherwise known as teeth. So these letters, these are Shins on top of the menorah here. If you look, this is the parenthetical addition. If you look close in the scriptures where it talks about the menorah, there was 3 bowls. You might think a wick in every bowl. 3 on each of the 6 branches and 4 in the middle. That's 22. Was there 22 lights representing the 22 letters on the menorah? You seldom see a menorah that's actually lit. But if you light them up, that's what this picture is. So I always try to draw the menorah with the lit candles because you'll always see menorahs not lit. We should light them. The point is, there's 22. There's like these sheaths. Symbol of El Shaddai. The word Yod Mem has a suffix at the end, like the word Elohim, gods. But you see, here's the problem. The people think, well, is there 3 gods? No, there's one El. But why is Elohim written in the plural? And as a Christian, I remember hearing this debated. Well, maybe that's because there's a trinity of 3. No. The way this works is that when you add the plural at the Yod Mem ending, it means the highest, the supremest. It's like the king saying, we would like for lunch, it's called the royal we, or the royal plural. And you might say by calling him Elohim, it's the most high El. Or you could say, well, the only high El, but El Elyon is the way you say the most high. So Elohim doesn't mean there's plural, it can simply mean the absolute pinnacle, the greatest, the best, the top, the ultimate. What does Yod Mem here mean? Is it plural? Does it mean demons? Or could it be that what this is saying is he will offer himself as a sacrifice unto Shadim, which is the greatest Shaddai, which means the hurler of arrows. Remember, it's like this mountain, like the Teton Mountains, like these great mountains, this high mountain from which you have the vantage point to hurl down arrows for like the field craft, devastating, like shooting cannons at your enemy, but it's also the dispenser of benefits. And it also means the ultimate sufficiency. El Shaddai, the one who provides everything that's sufficient, like the ultimate breast. So you get this picture in Hindu of this many-breasted woman. You go, oh, that's a false deity. Were they trying to say it's Shaddai, Shadim? You look at it in Christianity and say, oh, that's this heathen thing. It's like, did somebody somewhere remember a picture of Shadim and incorporate this, and it spun out like Pele, means wonderful, marvelous. In Hawaii, Pele became the volcano goddess. Everything we've got is twisted and spun. We can't look at what's existing and say, oh, that's evil, that's evil, that. It's like, listen, we got to go back to the truth. We've got to go back to what he revealed. This isn't a witch hunt. This isn't a matter of hunting down every permutation, every spin, every little twist, every little crook in the road. There's no time for that. This is going back to the straight path. The word anoch is a plumb line, the straight path of truth. What keeps it on the truth? The two houses of Israel are supposed to be the kashat, to keep this thing on the straight and narrow. The two voices. It's like the three-part government of the United States. You've got the one who makes a command, and the other two are supposed to keep it on the straight path. You've got the legislative, you've got the executive, and you've got the judicial. That's the way this is supposed to work. But the two houses of Israel are supposed to offset each other, like the picture of the husband and the wife, offsetting each other, keeping the thing on the straight path, like the straight arrow. The word straight is yashar. Yashar El is the straight El, which is the straight power, which is the word Israel. Yod Shin Resh Aleph Lamed. The point is, one way to read this is he sacrificed himself, he offered himself as a sacrificial offering unto the ultimate sufficiency. Sufficient for everyone. Sufficient for every malady, every affliction, every crime. Who's this talking about? Remember, if you think that every one of these letters is talking about Yeshua lifted up, every letter speaks of him. Every word speaks of him. So I could sit there and say, oh, this is talking about demons, or this is talking about the way that Israel went wayward, or this is talking about some other she-demon or a chest of drawers, or some military cannon, or I could say, no, this is somehow, this word is revealing the Mashiach. And when it says, he will offer himself as a sacrifice, a slaughter offering, sufficient for every possible wrong. As a dispenser of benefits, not obligated by oath. A law is an obligation by an oath. If you're under a curse, it's because you broke the oath. If you're obligated by oath, it's because you swore an oath. The word seven, Shabbat, is a sworn oath 7 times. If you keep the Shabbat, Saturday, the 7th day, it's because it's the sworn oath of those who enter the kingdom to keep the ways of Yahweh. It's not a cultural tradition. It's Yahweh's command as the sign that you are his and he is yours. Ani ladodi veladodi li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. The Shabbat is that sign. It's like the wedding ring, the tet, the full circle, as we say in the song. That's why you keep the Shabbat. If you're not his, don't worry about it. If you're not in the kingdom, pay no regard to the Shabbat. But if you think you're in the kingdom, if you've chosen to step inside the gate, you might want to regard the instructions before you're too quick to say it doesn't matter anymore. The point is, only those that were under the curse were the ones who broke the vows. Did he offer himself as a sacrifice because he broke the vows? No. He, Yeshua, did not break the vows. So he was not under the oath of the curse. He was not obligated. But you see, this word is also to lament and wail. The scriptures tell us in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, that he did not offer up a voice of woe and lament and wailing. He did it willfully to offer himself as a slaughter offering. This can be read as as Elohim, not. This has to do with being close to or being known by. In other words, one way to read this is that saying he did not present himself as being known as Elohim. When he came to present himself as the slaughter offering, he did not come presenting himself as Elohim. He came presenting himself as the Dalal, the one who hung down, who impoverished himself, who put aside his majesty in the realm of his true identity, came camouflaged as the Vav man who would be Zion, put to the weapon outside the Chet, despised, forsaken, rejected. All these words are embedded in the letters. To be counted as one vile, profane, common, disregarded, punched holes in and hollowed out. It's the word halal, it's het lamed lamed, where we get the word hell. He was made hell willingly, not under the obligation of the curse, but he came down not as Elohim, but as one of his brethren. Achzuris. Ach is the word brethren. The brother who would be regarded. But you see, if you go back to Deuteronomy, it says, which we talked about a minute ago. Excuse me. Deuteronomy 27. God, or non-Elohim, angered me with their emptiness, vanities. Excuse me, before that. Actually, excuse me, it's the next verse after this. They would slaughter sacrifices of demons without power, gods whom they knew not. Newcomers recently arrived, whom your ancestors did not dread. Is Jesus Christ a newcomer recently arrived? Yes! Jesus is a newcomer recently arrived. The New Testament and God that they didn't know, who didn't know? Our ancestors did not dread. Did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Did Elijah? Did David? Did Joseph? Did Solomon regard Jesus? Did they regard anything about him? No, they didn't. To regard Jesus Christ as a newcomer recently arrived who gave us a new covenant with new days to worship, booted out the Shabbat and gave us Sunday, Christmas, Easter, and Halloween, did away with the Torah, said that he accomplished it, eradicated it from our consciousness, and gave us something that we didn't have to regard anything, is a newcomer recently arrived, which is not the Yod He Vav He of the Brit of the covenant with Israel according to the Ketubah of the Ten Commandments, the Devarim, the matters that he gave us. So Jesus Christ from that description is not Yod He Vav He. To fulfill these words in Deuteronomy, he must be the epitome of everything Yahweh said. Fulfilling the full measure of every letter is the Nun Samech. The imparted law according to the engineered structure of the way that every one of these letters fit together perfectly as designed. And then you go back to Proverbs 25:11 and it says, golden apple set on carefully, skillfully crafted platter of silver, word fitly spoken. There's another way to interpret that, but just looking at those letters is exactly what this is. Because the word for apple is that which swells. It's also the perfumed, fragrant fruit. Yeshua himself, the word Yahweh Zavot, we've talked about this before. Zadi, Bet, Aleph, Vav, Tav. Zadi Bet is that which swells. It's the word that's translated hosts or legions. Elohim, legions. Yahweh, master of legions. But Zadi Bet is a swollen back. It's a covered wagon compared to a flatbed trailer. It's that which swells up. If you swell up the Aleph, Vav, Tav, if you inflate every possible letter into its full capacity, its full measure, its full identity as intended from the beginning, Aleph, Vav, bridge to Tav, the accomplishment as designed, that's the Aleph, Vav, Tav. That's the oath. That's the sign. That's the symbol. That is the inflating, like blowing air, like the Ruach, inflating the engineered structure of the Samech. That is Yeshua, the inflated letters of the alphabet, which is the picture. He's the Elohim of the swollen hosts. And the word Ani, as in Aniyawa, is translated I am. But if you look it up, it has to do with the fleet or ships. It's the emperor with his fleet of ships. And it can be translated, if you look at other words that have aleph and nuns in them, is I in my majesty. Yahweh himself has determined to reveal the majesty of his face. Again, the word face is pei, nun, yod. Pei is mouth, nun, the living thing that jumps out of. Yahweh's words, face. And in his majesty, he is determined to give us this Nun Psalmic. And Yeshua said, if I am lifted up, I will draw all men to me. But if you put these things together, it's like, wow, this is what Moses wanted to see. So if Jesus is the guy that did away with this, he's poking holes in Yahweh's balloon. Picture these little balloons that are uninflated. They're like these little letters. You blow them up and you see the full, you fill them with the Ruach HaKodesh, the true Yahweh's breath in them to full measured capacity, every letter according to the engineered structure, and it reveals the Mashiach, the Nun Psalmic, the banner, the flapping in the wind. To those that love me, I have given a banner to be raised up. Because of the truth, the word because can also be according to, or thus. It's the word kaf yod. There's other ways to spell kaf yod, or because. But I'm just saying, you look at this spelling of these words, this stuff comes alive. And these are just little words. If you keep translating these couple verses, I'll just go ahead because we're starting to run out of time. Let me read the way I got these few verses here. He will offer himself as a sacrifice, not obligated by oath, not lamenting or wailing. As Elohim, he will be not known by them, or he will not know them as Elohim, renovating, reactivating that which was ordained or set in place, the engineered structure, friendly-like, coming near, being offered as a sacrifice, into the midst he arrives. It's like putting your hand down into the snake pit. Not their enemy, and that's the word for Sha'ir, which is Shinai Resh, which is big, hairy, monstrous, causing them to tremble or shudder as a horrible measure, not one who is shrewd, cunning, crafty, but as a middleman, a mediator, interposed between yourself and what your forefathers have heaped up, not regarding the cost, not fearing or shuddering at the expense of what your ancestors have heaped up. I'm trying to throw out these words because the way Hebrew reads is just these words. I'm trying to give you like these bullet points of what the various words mean in the next 5 verses or so. Wrapped up, bound into the form, into the fashion or shape, besieged, confined so as to be treated with hostility as a foe. It sounds like it's talking about Yeshua. He put himself into a bet form and hung it down it so that we could tear the heck out of him like the ghillie suit. The Vav week. He will be birthed as your own child, as a gift, a present in weakness, feebleness. My weakness in order to lead you back to the chet from your weakness. Your weakness is habitual forgetfulness, amnesia. How else would you find what's lost to oblivion? Toward your being empty, dead, profane, deprived of priesthood, hollowed out, common, vile, contemptible, that's where it's Chet Lamed Lamed. Motion toward empowering you unto all forgiveness, pardon, canceled debt, and removal of your illness. You see, this sounds like Yeshua. And it's in these words that are in the Song of Moses. But if you read what we were given as a translation, you'll not see it. The only way to do it is to pick apart these letters and to put them together and try to construct what else he was saying. See, I would maintain that the entire truth is embedded in these words. Moses was crying out. He was trapped between the Pharaoh and the sea. He's like, Yahweh, please. Screaming. And Yahweh says, why are you screaming at me? What have you got in your hand? I got a stick. I only have a stick. I've got the armies of Egypt and I have the sea. Kind of like being between a rock and a hard place. And Yahweh says, what do you got in your hand? A stick. Remember the stick I brought for the Lamed? It had the 10 words written on it. There was a reason for that. We were given the covenant unto Shadim, unto the ultimate sufficiency. You see, the reason Yeshua had Lamed, authority, is because he kept the Lamed of the Kaf. He kept the correct interpretation and application of every single word of Torah to its perfect fulfillment, the absolute full inflation of every letter. There's no Christian that can deny this, because if he failed in one point, He would not be the perfect, sinless lamb. He couldn't have done anything. He had to fulfill every single little nuance of Torah. And he says, I fulfilled it. It all depends on how you translate the word fulfill. If he means he did away with it, why would he do it and then do away with it? Oh, because he knew he can't. Not so. He created humanity to do the very thing that he came and modeled. And it says right here in these letters, this is in the Song of Moses. And remember, it says, this song will come up in the last days as a witness to Israel, as a testimony. Remember, here's these words, heaven and earth is the witness. If we don't know how to read the words, how can this ever be a witness to Israel? It'll only be a witness to Israel when Israel translates these words into understanding in order to do what he said. I'm not sure where we are at time, but it looks like we're pretty near the 5 minutes. There's a number of other things I wanted to get into here. Well, let me ask this. Does anybody have anything to say or to, we've got 7 minutes, anything to say or to contribute here that they want to throw in before I go on to what I have on the next set of pages here, which we don't have time for nearly everything I got here. Is there anything anybody else wants to? Nobody? This, if we go to Psalm 118, there's so much in Psalm 118. If you picture let me show you this. One of the things I mentioned on the chart was this thing called a horsetail plant. I picked this afternoon. Unfortunately, a couple months ago, these things were in their younger state and they were very easy to see. This thing is wilted. But I've made mention on the chart, down here in the bottom, model equisetum horsetail plant. Equisetum is the Latin name for this. This is a horsetail plant. And as I tried to describe it, I was thinking one day, back in 2005, about the alphabet and the relationship of the letters to each other. That drove me crazy. I was trying to think of this thing. I should just take a break. Go for a walk in the garden and not think about it. Just take a refreshing pause. A refreshing pause can also be known as a ruach. I walked down to the garden and these things were just coming up, and I saw immediately that this was the pattern I was envisioning of the relationship of the letters to each other. This horsetail plant. What is it? In this stage, I counted a number of them this afternoon. There's only about 16 or so branches, but see, each one of these segments, branches, breaks off here. And so here's a segmented, but when they're younger, I noticed that there's approximately 22. There might be 17, 18, there might be 25, but there's approximately 22 vertical segments. And at each segment, there's this juncture, and there's an array of these smaller ones coming out of it, and there's the same number in the array. There's approximately 22. So picture a vertical chronological sequence like the alphabet of 22 letters. And at each juncture, there's an array going around it. This is a geometrical model. There's an array going around it of 22, you might say, tangents or what do you call it, vectors shooting out. So picture the center stalk of the 22 letters like the Nun Samach. And around the Nun Samach, you've got at each juncture, at each letter, you've got the other 22 letters. If you can picture that model, you realize that each of the 22 letters fully encompasses each of the other 22 letters, but each one is a perspective, a vantage point. So the top half of this chart was my attempt to explain this in order and row as a three-dimensional geometrical model here, which is to say, vertical column, that's each one of the letters, and the horizontal row is like each one of these junctures. So in other words, if each one of these vector-like needles coming out is a letter, they're each perspective. So from any letter, you could look at, from a gimel, you could say, what's an aleph, what's a bet, what's a gimel, what's a dalet? From a gimel perspective. Well, what's a gimel perspective? You read down the chart and you get the synthesis. You put them all together and you get the feeling of gimelness. Simply put, the camel, or a verb, that which moves back and forth. So those are the top of the list. But you get a gimel. So from a gimel perspective, you could say, from something that moves to something which goes back and forth, what's an aleph? What's a bet? What's a gimel? So forth and so on. You can do that for each letter. But also, from each letter, you could go out on the vector and say, okay, this is getting a little bit more obscure, right? Multidimensional. I'm going to go out on the noon of the Gimel and look back and say, what's the Gimel look like from the noon of the Gimel perspective? Now, the thing about this is that once you get a handle on this, you realize that this is a model of a multidimensional, what you might call a hypersphere, where you can start jumping between all these different letters in the different words. And once you do that, you realize Shaddai simply is not a chest of drawers or an open field or a demon. It might mean El Shaddai's greatest gift, provision of sufficiency, which includes devastating your enemy. Now, one of the things I noticed in Psalm 118, we've only got a couple minutes left, but if you go back to Psalm 118, David says something really interesting. He says in verse 13, "You have pushed me hard that I might fall, but Yahweh assisted me." That word assisted is Ayin, Zayin, Resh, Azir. So if you say, well, Yahweh assisted me, he didn't just assist him, he encircled him. He encircled David, like the letters around the noon summit. And there's another place, a couple other, verse 21, "Thank you. You have answered me and revealed to me Lamed Yod Shin Vav Ayin Hey." Well, Shin Ayin, as we talked before, is the word redeem, salvation, deliverance. Lamed Yod Shin is the word for lion. It's also do or neater. You have revealed to me how to work the lion of my deliverance. And it's also the word Shinayin. Shinayin is to take the light. It's amused, sported, and played. It's very similar to the word for Yitzhak, which also means amused, sported, and played. But it's also, there's this other word in verse 20. It says, "This is the gate of Yahweh." And the word "this," as we said one other week, Zayin Hey. Zayin Hey. This is the gate. We've only got a couple minutes here. Is Ha, Shin, Ayin, Resh, unto Yod, He, Vav, He. So for David to say, I was wondering what was going on. I was surrounded by my enemies, and you assisted me. And he's talking about this is the gate of Yahweh. If he's talking about this, and we were saying this is the Zayin Hey, the revealed, the thing that was cut off, this is Yeshua. He also talks about circumcision. And the point is this: those who are circumcised unto Yahweh bear the sign of the covenant. And it says, because I belong to Yahweh, Yahweh will slaughter my enemies who have surrounded me. There's a reciprocal, which is kind of like you might say, here's the crazy 8, and you could say 1/8 is the reciprocal, but it's a crazy 8, so you could almost write it like this. You could say that's under eternity. I'm playing around, but my point is this. It's a diametrically opposing pattern. All through Psalm 118, David talks about being surrounded by his enemies, but because he figured out the entrance, which is the word Sha'ir, which means big, hairy, horrible, monstrous, but it's also the gateway, the entrance, the pillars like Boaz and Yakin, which is also Yahweh's target that Yeshua came and opened the door for to restore the covenant to his people. He says, because I have found this, because you answered me, if you redeemed me from those who were circling around me, and they will be slaughtered. It's an inverse picture of the sign of circumcision. You get cut off with this circle pattern, and Yahweh will cut off your enemies who have circled around you. It's a very direct, specific, pictorial metaphor, masculine. David saw this stuff. I'm convinced Paul saw this stuff. Yahweh embedded this stuff, and one who takes counsel, and the word is advice, and it's right up here, my advice. Ayin, Tet, Yod is the word my advice. Ayin, to see, to have the understanding, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding. It's also the word up here for the encircling crown. Ayin, Tet, Resh. Resh is the exalted man. The encircling crown around the exalted man is Israel doing the covenant according to taking the advice of Yahweh, which is the full basket of understanding the things that he said, that he gave us to weigh and measure, which is the full inflation of Yeshua's prestige, which is the same word as glory, honor, adore, the same word adore, which is like the Adar, which is Aleph, Dalet, Resh, we're out of time. My point is, this is huge stuff. We're just at the beginning.